watching this video. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another drawing video with me, Mrs. Shano. Today, we are going to be making a drawing all about something called perspective. Perspective is probably a word that you've heard before. Someone might say, oh, change your perspective on that, or I really like your perspective on that idea. Maybe you've heard adults use that word. And perspective, in that sense, is how you look at a situation or how you think about something. In art, perspective is how you look at space. And space is an element of art, one of the 7 very key elements that make up great artwork. Space, not outer space, space is the environment around you, how big and small objects are. Sometimes shapes overlap. Sometimes there's positive and negative space, meaning the space of the object and the space around the object. Sometimes there are objects that are closer and farther away. And then there's something called perspective, which is how objects seem to get smaller as they're far away and they appear larger when they're closer. And there are some rules that we can follow in our artwork that will really make our 2D flat artwork look 3D and full of true space. So I want to talk about something called linear perspective. Linear meaning the word line, using lines to create a feeling of depth, not death like dying, depth like deepness in your art. Now, I have this Google image search. It says 1-point perspective. 1-point perspective is a kind of line perspective or linear perspective where you use 1 point on the horizon line or where the ground meets the sky, 1 point that every line seems to disappear to. This tree is large because it's close, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller, and they would disappear at that dot on the horizon line, which we call a vanishing point. The buildings, big, medium, small, they would get smaller and smaller. This road seems to get narrower and narrower until it disappears at that vanishing point. So we today are going to make a drawing with 1-point linear perspective, 1-point perspective. And it's easier than you would think. And here's a photograph that shows in real life, if you look at a road, you stand in the middle of the road, don't do that without a grown-up, friends, and you look down that road, if it goes really far without any turns being cut off, you can see it seems to make a triangular shape because that road seems to your eye, to disappear at that vanishing point on the horizon. So here are a few different drawings that I made using 1-point perspective, where I put 1 point on the horizon line, and all those lines make it appear that my drawing has a lot of depth, deepness, and everything disappears at that space. Now, I'm going to show you, here I put some red lines here, you can see those red lines show how my road is pointing to that dot and it disappears at that spot. Every object is big close up and disappears into tiny nothingness as it gets farther away. So, today, let's make our own 1-point perspective drawing. Whoopsies, let me just open a new clicky. That's what I'll do. I have too many drawings open right now. Alrighty, friends. So, what we're going to start with, whether you're on paper or on clicky.com, is a landscape layout. Landscape meaning your paper is horizontal. It is longer than it is tall. So go ahead and get your landscape layout. Again, if you're on Clicky, white paper, landscape, okay, and there we go. The very first thing you're going to do with your paper is you are going to get a straight line across your page for a horizon line. On Clicky, you can click the shape tool and then this line on a piece of paper. Grab a ruler and a pencil. Now I'm going to make my horizon line a little bit higher than the middle of my paper. So maybe like there. And again, I think that's a little crooked. Let me try again. Even on a computer, I have trouble making straight lines sometimes. There we go. Now again, a horizon line is where the land seems to touch the sky. It's where those two seem to meet. To our eye, the land and sky truly don't actually meet. All right, next I need to draw my vanishing point. Every good perspective drawing that uses linear or line perspective if you're using 1-point perspective, you're going to put that 1 point on your horizon to show everything's going to vanish at that spot, or seem to. Nothing really vanishes. Some things just get so small as they're far away that our eyes can't see them anymore. I think that's the middle. My goodness, sometimes I have trouble measuring with my eyes. Alrighty. Now, I'm trying to decide whether we're going to do a desert or a Tampa Bay kind of ocean meets buildings picture. The buildings might be a little tricky, but I think it might be fun for you guys to try learning how to draw a 3D box. So we're going to challenge ourselves, and if it's too tough, so what? You tried, right? You tried. That's all that matters. So the first thing I want to do in my drawing is I want to draw the grass next to the Tampa Bay over here. I'm going to imagine this is Tampa Bay. This is the grass next to the road. We don't want anybody driving off that road right into the ocean or into the Gulf, so I'm going to put a little bit of green grass right there. And see, if you're all done, you can totally decorate it with palm trees and a fence and all that. But let's start with the basics. So I'm going to go back to my line tool, click on the shapes, click on the line. I'm still on my black pencil. There we go. I have to make sure all of my lines touch that dot, because in a perspective drawing with 1-point perspective, every line is going to vanish at that point. So I'm going to have the grass come over here and go off that page. Now I want to put the 2 lines for my road. And again, a road is going to look like a triangle when you look down that road and it goes off into the distance, because it starts off wide and then it gets narrower and narrower and narrower as it goes off into the distance. Your eye kind of plays tricks on you when things are far away. They just look really small and smaller, 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 smaller until they can't be seen anymore. So now I'm going to come from this side, and this side of the road is going to go off this way. And you see I've got a triangle. Again, you see I'm not going like this. The road is going to come out this way, and now we've got a triangular shape. Now, just so your eyes don't get confused, I'm going to go ahead and really quick put some color in the water. I'm going to put some color on the grass, and I'm going to put some color on my road so that you guys aren't confused looking at this. So that's going to be water, that's going to be grass, and that's going to be road. Do not feel like you have to color anything right now. Now, what I'd like all of you to do is, once you have those first 3 lines, 1, 2, and 3, we're going to draw some rectangles. So if you're on Clicky, you can grab that shape tool and get that empty rectangular shape, and we're going to make 3 rectangles. 1 big up close, because objects close seem larger, 1 a little bit smaller, and a 3rd the smallest because it's so far away. Now you don't have to do 3, you can do 2 buildings. You know what, maybe we'll do 2. If you want to put 3, 4, or 5, go ahead, just follow the rule that big, too small. So I'm going to put 2 buildings. I'm going to start with 1 that, we're going to make it look like a skyscraper. And a skyscraper is called a skyscraper because it seems to scrape the sky, even though it's not. So you're going to start up in that sky. You're going to make a rectangle. Remember, a rectangle is a 2D shape with often 2 long sides and 2 shorter sides. So you just don't want it to go out into the road. Leave some space there. So there's my rectangle. And you're going to want to erase that horizon line because that rectangle would be hiding the ground behind it now. So go ahead and work on that rectangle. Now I know I'm moving very fast in my video. I'm always happy if you want to pause it and we'll stop, keep drawing, and then continue. If you're watching this on YouTube, obviously go ahead and pause it if you need to. I just erased the big blob of my vanishing point, but don't forget that vanishing point there. Take your time. This is not a race. I just only have a certain amount of time for my videos, and I want to get everything in. So again, I made 1 straight line across my horizon. Then I put a dot for my vanishing point right in the middle of that line. I had a line start at that vanishing point and come over and out, and there's the grass on the side of my road. Then I had a line come over and down on one side of the road, and then the opposite direction, over and down for the other side of my road. And it looks like I just have 3 triangles now. Triangular shape for the bay over here, triangular shape for the grass over here, triangular shape for my road over here, and then I've got a rectangle over here for the start of a building. And again, this is what it will start to look like if you finish up that picture. So I need to put another rectangle now that I have that rectangle. And remember, if you are making a 3D perspective drawing with lines, you're going to want to remember the rule that the next building is going to be smaller because we're trying to make it look like it's farther away. So I'm going to go a little bit lower in the sky because it's smaller. And again, I can't make it go out into the road. So I'm going to stop about there. And then I'm going to use my eraser tool, and I'm going to erase the horizon line because I would not see it. Buildings are not clear. Buildings are made out of concrete and steel, which is a kind of metal, and sometimes some windows and glass, obviously, but they're not all made out of glass, so you can't see through buildings. So I don't want to be able to see that horizon line anymore. All right. At this point, I've got my two front faces of that 3D shape. Now here's where perspective comes in. The rule is that the side of these buildings would disappear. It's going to follow the angle of that vanishing point. And this can be a little confusing. So I'm going to show you, before you draw, I want you all to watch something. On my layer 2, I'm going to grab a red, and I'm going to show you how these lines, I would line them up with a ruler or with my eye. Actually, I'm going to grab my shape tool, my little one line. So here's my vanishing point. The top of this building, the side of it would angle down. That's going to be the angle of that building on the side. We're looking straight at this flat part of the building, so the angles wouldn't be funny on that shape. But the side here, we have to change the angles. The side of the building needs to point to that vanishing point. So here we go. This one would point to the vanishing point. Same thing for this building. The side of the building is going to line up with that vanishing point. And the bottom side is going to do the same thing. Now, right now, this looks a little confusing, right? You're like, Mrs. Shano, what are these lines all about? Okay, remember what I said. Everything's pointing to the vanishing point. All right, so I'm going to go back to my layers here. I'm going to make this a little bit see-through. I'm going to make that very light. And I'm going to go back to this drawing layer. You do not have to draw these red lines. I'm just trying to show you something while I create. Back to my shape tool, I'm going to follow the lines. I'm going to start with the big building. And if I follow, now I don't want to attach it to this line because buildings don't go off into the distance that far. I'm going to stop about here. I don't want to completely cover up this building here. I'm going to stop there. Again, I made it a little crooked. Let's try that again. About there. And then the bottom of the building will come out about as far. So I'm looking here. I'm following that angle so that if I kept going, it would touch that point. Again, I know this is confusing. So if you're like a first or second grader watching this video and this part's really confusing to you, don't feel like you have to make your drawings perfect. This is super new stuff and it is very confusing. But it's so fun to learn new things like this. All right, so here are the two lines for the side of my building. And again, if I kept going, you see these red lines, they would eventually line up and touch that vanishing point. But anywho, I need to draw the tall side part. Any line that goes up and down is going to stay perfectly straight. It's not going to make any sort of a weird angle there. Anyways, so any line that's up and down is perfectly up and down. The front of your building is just a normal rectangle. It's those side lines here, the top and bottom, that have to point to that vanishing point. So now watch what happens when I erase where things overlap. I wouldn't see this anymore. That building's in the way. Building number 2 is being hidden by building number 1. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. And all of a sudden, look at that. It looks like a 3D box. It looks like a building. And it looks 3D because of the changed angles on the side. The top and bottom are pointing to that vanishing point. It looks like a box. You know how to draw a box now. A 3D rectangular prism or cube, you know how to do it. Now, obviously this isn't a cube, but you could do the same thing if you drew a square. You would just angle the top, angle the bottom, pointing to an invisible point in the distance. Super exciting stuff. All right, now I have to do building number 2. Again, the sides would need to point to the vanishing point. So that means it would go down from the sky because this is high up, and up from the bottom to point to that line because this is lower down. So vanishing point, pointing to it, from this corner pointing to that vanishing point. And then again, remember, any part of the building that's going up and down stays perfectly up and down, no wonky angles. Alrighty, let me get rid of my red layer now. I don't need to see that anymore, but you see, those vanishing points are important. It's pointing to the angles on that building. All right. I want to erase for sure where these buildings overlap with the horizon line here. That building is covering the ground back there, so I don't want to see that ground. And there you have it. You made 2 buildings if you followed this along with me. I'm going to go through and quick color in my work of art. Now, you are the artist. You color this in however you want. Maybe you want it to be daytime. Maybe you want it to be nighttime. Actually, I'm going to add in a little sun. I'm going to do a sunset in this picture, whereas in my first picture, I made it morning. I'm going to make this one sunset kind of time during the day. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to put some warm colors in the sun, in the sky, because a lot of times sunsets have this, this fun yellows to oranges to like purples in the sky, which purple is a cool color, but close to the sun would be warm colors. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to throw in some really fun colors in my sky. Oh, I need more blending. Let's make the blending stronger. Not that strong, Mrs. Shano. I'll go in and blend it better later. Whoopsies. I'm just going to throw in some color back there. Ooh, pinks. Maybe hot pink. Forget the purples. I'm going to put in some pinks. Whoopsies. Go away, elements of art. We did a good job with perspective. We don't need you up there anymore. All right, now I'm going to go in and blend away. Whee! You put in the kind of sky you want. Now, even though we were talking about how this is a perspective drawing and we talked about space, we did create a landscape. A landscape is an area of land outside as the artist sees it. We made a beautiful landscape of a road next to Tampa Bay, which is something that I'm sure some of you have seen many times if you are one of my students here in Florida. Alrighty, so there is my sky. I could definitely blend it a little better if I wanted to, but for time's sake, I'm going to leave it alone, and I'm actually going to make my sun a little bit brighter. Now, I want to put the white dots on my road, and remember, following the rules of perspective, they'd be tiny back here, boop, 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 and then they get bigger and farther apart as we come closer and closer to where we're imagining that we're standing. So bigger, 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 biggest, coming right off the page. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and color the sidewalk for my buildings. I'm going to imagine that's all gray over here. I'm going to imagine the side of my buildings as a nice bright gray because the sunlight is hitting them. I'm going to make this side a little darker because the sunlight, these sides of the buildings would be in shadow. You know, do that if you want to. You don't have to. I'm going to go ahead and put some windows on all of my buildings, and I'm going to do it very quickly. I'm just going to put some little lines. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And same thing here. Boop, 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 boop. Have fun with that. Put some windows. Maybe I'll pick a darker blue for this side because they're in shadow. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Whoopsies. 1, 2, 3. Oh my goodness, I'm not making those balanced at all. Windows are definitely put in neat rows, Mrs. Shano. And maybe I'll put a big glass door in the front. You could be totally creative here if you want. You could use a pretty color and like name this building after yourself. I'm going to name this Hotel Shano. Hotel Shano. I'm going to imagine I have my own hotel right on the water. Woohoo! Hotel Shano. Name your building whatever you like. Now, if you want to throw in some trees, remember, big to small. Big up close, small far away. Just like that. Big, medium, small. And I could have kept going. Smaller, 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 smaller. Same thing with my fence. Bigger to medium to teensy weensy in the distance. So I'm going to go in. I'm going to put some palm tree trunks. I'm just using a kind of a zigzag line. I'm imagining these are textured trees. So that one's tallest. Maybe I'll make it even a little taller. This one's medium. This one would be smaller, smaller. There we go. Actually, I'm going to make these a little taller even. Actually, I think I made them too close to my grass. I want to have plenty of room for my fence. I'm being silly. I'm going to make them start here. See, I change my art all the time. So biggest, and remember, palm trees can have a curve to them. They don't have to be perfectly straight. A little bit smaller, a little bit smaller, smaller, smallest. Time for palm leaves. You know, they look like big floofs. Over this way, over that way, over this way, over that way. Give it a swoop, and then give it some of those branches. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Swoop, swoop, have fun with your palm trees. Don't feel like they all have to be perfect. Just have, they look like fireworks really. That's what's so cool about palm trees. Swoop, swoop, they all those palm branches kind of explode outwards from the center. And here's the front palm. So I'm going to put the most detail on this one because it's so close up. I would be able to see all those little leaves and branches on this palm tree. I'm going to put lots of little swooping palm branches going right off the page if I want to. Look at that, super fun. And last touch for my drawing, the details are the fun part. We did the hard part. We made that perspective drawing. We used 1 point perspective with a vanishing point. We made sure all of the angles end up at that point if they would continue. Some of them do continue, like this side part. Some of them stop because the building stops, but we followed the angle so it would point to the vanishing point. Now these details, as long as we follow the rules of perspective, big to small and far away, this is the fun part, and you don't have to think so hard about it. Big up close and far apart, then they get smaller and closer together. Smaller and closer together, smaller and closer together, into the distance. I'm going to imagine that this fence has wires on it, so I'm just going to easy peasy just connect little swooping metal lines as if there's wires saying, hey cars, stay on the road. Please don't drive into the palm trees and the water. That's not the best thing to do. Watch your driving. Excuse you, Belle. It's time for me to go start my workday. And good thing, because I just finished my drawing. I'm super happy with it. I hope you had a ton of fun working on linear perspective. 1 point perspective, making a drawing that looks 3D. This landscape is super fun. We made an incredible work of art today. You learned something new. You totally thought about the word perspective. Come back, mister. I didn't mean to make it totally go away. There it is. We learned about perspective and how space in artwork can totally be the #1 thing you think about when making your artwork. I hope you had fun. If you're not finished and you want to keep working on it, put in your finishing details. Thank you for drawing with me as always, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!